I'm going to apologize in advance for how incredibly fast I'm going to have to talk to get through all of my slides. And if there are any slides up that have writing on that you don't quite catch what I've said, or it's got links to things or references, just take a screenshot, take a photo. I really don't mind if people take photos. And you can always ask me questions on LinkedIn or Twitter, whatever. So I'm Ellie. I'm a managing consultant and experimentation ninja at Digital. We have 2 job titles. There's our real one and our what we do outside of work. And I mostly do experimentation outside of work and inside work. So I've been in the industry for about 10 years, and I help product teams, mostly product teams, to build experiments at scale and be able to prove the value of their product. Some things that I'm really proud of is some things here that I've listed, including being Experimenter of the Year in 2022 at Experimentation Elite, and a few other things. And as this year, I've spoken in front of 2,400 people. It's the most exciting thing I think I've ever done. So that's some things that you can know about me. So what I'm going to talk about is how you shouldn't let yourself not test an idea because you're trying to come up with the perfect idea, or you're trying to come up with the perfect way of validating a hypothesis. And if you're a person who's coming to market with a new product, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late. So this is Reid Hoffman, from the founder of LinkedIn. And basically, this is the core of just get something out. If you get something out, it's in front of customers, you're starting to collect data, you're talking to people. So this talk is in 2.5 parts, because obviously I've come from a bit of a product experimentation background, and I want to make sure that I'm covering some of the concepts that I might talk about around discovery and validation. And a lot of people use different words to mean the same thing when it comes to discovery and validation. Then I'm going to talk about the gap, and then I'm going to talk really fast about avoiding a waste-producing machine at the end. So a quick primer on discovery and validation. Some of you might have heard this term before. It kind of came up in the 90s. Basically, companies building websites were just launching stuff and not actually working out in advance what they were going to do and why. And they were wasting a lot of time trying to convince their customers that they needed this great product that they come up with, rather than developing a product that customers actually wanted. So it led to a lot of waste and lots of expensive failures. And so off the back of this, and alongside the fact that things like the Agile Manifesto came out and all that sort of thing, people started to think, oh, maybe we should validate as we go. Maybe we should find out how we should build something and what we should do. And some of you who have heard of Teresa Torres, please check out Teresa Torres. She's way better at explaining what discovery is than I am. Just go watch it. She's got great videos, great content online. But she talks a lot about this process of continuously looking for opportunities and solving for solutions. And product discovery is the process of working out what we should build so that you can then go into product delivery and actually deliver a great product. I'm not going to read this slide. This is literally just a list of loads of techniques you can use in discovery. This is not an exhaustive list, and some really good references here on the right. If you want to get the basics, the Maze Guide to Product Discovery is fantastic. Product Board is also a really good one. But these are different types of techniques that you can use, both qualitative and quantitative, before you build a product from scratch, and some frameworks that you can reference here too. So a quick primer on what I refer to as validation. The oldest and quickest way of validating a product is just to launch it. Just turn it on one day, see if any customers come, see how it does. Wouldn't recommend that, it's a bit risky. So, but it's surprising the number of teams who use validation techniques incorrectly, or just simply use them to validate something they've already built or were going to build anyway. So do any of these things sound familiar? The product teams build this product and ship it, then our user researcher does some late stage validation after launch. And then we have another team who might run an A/B test. Yeah, we do some A/B testing, but it's not core capability. We should ship the core of the product value, then optimize it with some small tests later. We did some prototypes and wrote a user research report about 6 months ago, but haven't done any user testing with the live site recently. We measured each metric before and after launch, and we thought that was enough. So these are some examples of where people are pushing out lots and lots of features, but they're not actually necessarily validating them as they roll them out. And actually, there's so many things you can do in order to have validation techniques built into what you do. You can start, I won't go through all of these, but definitely check out Itamar Glad. I take a lot of references from him, and you'll see them in the rest of the talk. Starting with your assessment, trying to decide what you're going to do in advance. What's the data analysis? What are the surveys? What's the user research? What's the qualitative work? What's the inputs you can do? What are some tests you can do that help you decide what to do? So a classic one is doing a beta, for example. I won't explain what all of these are, but dog food is making your internal teams use your product before you launch it to customers. Usability tests, etc. And then when you get to the final stage, actually as you roll it out and you validate it, having a holdback group, doing a percentage rollout launch, multivariate tests, A/B tests. Again, another list of like extensive qualitative, quantitative techniques. I'm not going to talk through all of these, and some really, really good resources. Definitely check out on Medium, Netflix, Skyscanner, Itamagalad, really, really good stuff in there. So I would plumb the depths of that one. So the key takeaways from the primer section of my talk is you can do discovery, but not all things found in discovery can be validated, and not all things found during validation could have been predicted by even the best discovery. So you need a bit of discovery and a bit of validation, and you need to be able to use those two things together, but they won't necessarily always tell you exactly the same information. So bridging the discovery validation gap. So one of the challenges when you're trying to solve problems for customers is a little bit like this. You've got things that you know and things that you don't know. So there are some things that you want to know, but you don't know it yet, like things you want to track that you can't track yet. Things that you definitely know, like, oh, I know the number of unique visitors who visited the page today. An unknown known, you don't know how much of your traffic is real. And then unknown unknowns. So analyses that you would like to be able to do once you've got data, but you don't know what that's going to look like once you've got it all together. And the challenge when you're trying to find customer problems is trying to find, a line of inquiry that you can go down and right, I can go into GA and I can find out this information and I can form a hypothesis. Well, what about the scenarios which are kind of in the unknown box, where you don't know what the answer is going to be, and you actually need to bring lots of different data sources together in order to come up with a customer problem. So it's a bit of a challenge in order to try and find them. So walking through the kind of theory, I mean, lots of you might have seen the double diamond before, so I'm sorry if I'm showing you something you've already seen before, but this is the double diamond. A lot of people talk about this, so it's the way you go through the phases from discovery to validation. So in the beginning, you're broadening out, you're discovering, you're learning all the different problems that you possibly could solve. Then you're narrowing in. I'm picking a particular customer problem that I'm interested in solving. Then you're going into like solving that problem, coming up with potential solutions. Oh, I've got 2 or 3 experiment ideas, or I've got 2 or 3 campaigns that I could use in order to solve that problem. Then you pick a particular one, you prioritize it, you build it, and you launch it to customers, or you find a way of rolling it out in a validated manner. But there's 2 things that people often don't talk about. The first one is risk. What's our appetite for risk as we roll something out? Do we want to roll it out in a big bang, which is really risky? Do we do continuous releases of code, like every single day we're launching a little bit of code? Or do we have like 1 release a month? So actually there's a lot of risk in that release. We have to have all of our documentation in good standing. We have to take the site down overnight just to be able to do a very basic launch because we're worried about how it will impact our customers. So there's a lot of things built into like the business's appetite for risk. And then also the real production costs, like what actually happens when you release something. Let's say a client comes in and says, you have to build this feature for me, and it's a really weird feature that only that client wants, and you have to go and build it. And then after that, you're maintaining this piece of spaghetti code that you put up on your site or put into your product, and actually you're having to sustain it when actually it's technically sort of a kind of technical debt to you. So how do you kind of solve for the discovery validation gap? Well, if you just launch stuff, you're going from, I had an idea, I've launched it to everyone. So just launch. So there's no discovery, we're just building stuff. And here, every time you launch something, you might be getting the rewards, but you're getting masses of risk every time you do something negative. So this is an example of one where I've had 2 experiments maybe that have launched and been successful, and I've had 2 that have done horribly. And I've hit the whole of the risk of that issue from doing that. When you start to do a little bit of discovery, you're ideating, you're going through loops where you're actually testing things before you launch them. You're actually going through maybe research, user research, doing an alpha or a beta, then you build it, and then you launch it to everyone. So you're slightly increasing the amount of value you're getting, and you're slightly decreasing the risk. You're more likely to be building something that your customers actually want, but you're still not quite there. If you can do validation, discovery and then validation as you do it, so you do your early discovery, then as you roll it out in a feature flag, you put it into a percentage rollout, you slowly increase the number of customers, you do an experiment. You can actually get the benefit of both. So you get the most reward from each individual test, and you're also massively reducing the risk of each one. So it's definitely a massive benefit to do both. In terms of how you think about different validation techniques, There's more risk when you do things which have smaller sample sizes just because you're at risk of not reaching all of the different segments that could be within your customer group. And so if you do user testing, maybe do it more than one time. Do a few different types of qualitative tests as well as some more quantitative tests. The more quantitative the test, the larger group of people that you're validating with as you roll it out, the fewer different types of tests you might need to do because you're collecting more evidence. The job of the product manager or the person running the CRO program or the person directing the vision for like what you're going to build in life is to flex up and down this curve based on a few different things. Your relationship with your stakeholders. If you have great relationships with your stakeholders, you can do whatever you want. You can say, look, I only needed to validate it with 10 people because we know this is a line that we feel really confident in. Your tolerance for risk. You know, like I said before, the higher your tolerance for risk, the more risky you can be as you roll stuff out, but actually it reduces the risk to the customer. Your buy-in from the business, if you've got great buy-in, awesome. And your knowledge and experience. You might have been already running like 25 experiments in this vein, and you know that this is a really good test and that you're just trying to eke out a little bit more, versus a new area where you might be experimenting for the first time. So avoiding a waste-producing machine. So having solved for doing discovery and validation at the same time, now we want to make sure that we've got a process wrapped around what we're doing so we can avoid building waste, building things that customers don't want, building things that we have to maintain that we actually don't want to. So there's roughly 6 steps, sorry for the amount of text on this slide, but follow a proven discovery and ideation process. Stop when you have a small number of customer problems that you want to start working on. Don't try and find every single customer problem. Prioritize those problems and ideas correctly and quickly. Avoid validating for the sake of it, and when you validate, iterate smarter. And then finally, incorporate an experiment mindset. So, example of a proven discovery process. Look at all the different types of data you've got: quant, qual, user research, customer calls, things from customer services, even like bizarre voice reviews. Collect those together in a holistic way, so you're kind of connecting the dots between your quant and qual data so you can find the same type of insight or customer problem. Frame them as customer problems, and then create backlogs within each customer problem area. So you can pick ideas from each backlog to work on simultaneously or work in them sequentially. And then stop when you've got about 6. So this is an example where I've taken the detail out from a particular client where they had 6 really big areas that they had issues in. And the ones that they decided that they wanted to do experiments in were product discovery, people being able to try and find products on the website. Evaluation, oh, what's the difference between these 2 products? How do I choose? What customization should I have? And navigating the website. And they decided to fix these other 3 another time. You know, they made a prioritization decision and it reduced the amount of load for them. Prioritize really well. Once you've picked a customer problem you want to work on and you pick a solution, use something like this. Again, this is another one from MeasureFest. Please take a photo of this. Like if you do anything in life that involves data, validation, people coming to you with requests for, I want to build this, just hang this above your desk and say, where would you plot your idea on this graph? If it's below 3, tell them to go away, basically. Like just tell them that your idea is not worth doing until you've gone and validated it by collecting more evidence. And that actually sends someone away and they have to go and think about, oh, actually, have I done enough testing? Have I validated this idea? And then once you've got a list of problems, prioritize them. You know, so using that same confidence scale, prioritize the idea and accept that, you know, you can't have all the ideas you want to work on. You sometimes have to just get started and start continuously collecting data. And then also think about outcome and impact over output. So definitely check out Jeff Patton's videos. He's amazing. And he's written the book, which I've suddenly forgotten the name of, which is the user story writing book. And someone will have to remind me the name of it. But he does this amazing video where he talks about the difference between output, which is like number of JIRA tickets we've processed, the amount we've delivered in a sprint, versus outcome, which is what's important for the customer and the business. And also there's this little idea from this guy called Sam Weaver about productivity versus number of features, so productivity of your customers versus features. And actually, if you add too many features to your site, your user might become unproductive. So don't prioritize everything, don't try and do everything, focus on the outcome and impact. And then also think about experiments where you can add in more variations so you can test more things simultaneously so you're not sequentially testing and it will save you some time. And then avoid validating ideas for the sake of it. So taking that same graph from Itamar Galad, he later has this advice. I won't read through all of this, but one of the things that he just does is basically, if it's in this region, probably don't do it. If this region, maybe, but something small. If it's in this region, yes, but again, you might want to cross-validate. In these, definitely go for it. And then he talks about like how much validation you need depends on the cost, how risky it is, and your risk tolerance, which is what I said earlier. This is from Teresa Torres again, where she talks about the difference between designing the entire system versus designing just one part of the system and testing it before actually building the rest of the system. I know this is a bit complicated to explain, but if you imagine this is a website with 4 pages, and the designer wants to design all 4 first up front before they test the first one, but then they have to redesign B, C, and D to fit in with the tested version of A. And she goes through it in her article, and I won't read it all out, but you know, the thinking process of don't try and design the entire system, design the little bit that you need to launch now, and then iterate so that you can design the rest of the system as you go. So avoiding a waste-producing machine, I've run through steps 1 to 5, and the final one is about incorporating an experiment mindset. So what I'm going to talk through now is an introduction to EDD, or experiment-driven development, so encouraging product teams to use experimentation within their release and delivery of code. So it's a hypothesis-driven approach to software development, a little bit like test-driven development and BDD as well. Its purpose is to improve the way we deliver software and software and features using agile methodologies. So it's a conceptual framework that helps us to approach how we build features in a more data-driven way. And this is an example actually written by a developer that was at a conference, a developer conference from a few years ago, which was all about trying to explain to, get this experiment mindset in front of people who are actually building code, not just in front of people who are thinking about what we should build from a product perspective. And it's not new. So this is an article from 2021. 2019, definitely get this book. This book is amazing. This is a friend of mine who wrote this. It's absolutely brilliant. Like, he published like everything he ever learned about how to do experiment-driven development as a product person. That diagram I just showed was an EDD framework written in Ruby, written by this guy, 1994. This is how old this article is, written by a software engineer about design of experiments in software engineering. So it's very, very old, but people think, oh, it's new, it's brand new, we've only been doing it for like the last 8 to 10 years. Like, no, people have been building experiments, but in a different way for years and years. So why do it? It helps with a lot of stuff across the software development lifecycle. Do my customers really want this feature? Do they still want this old thing that we quite like to get rid of, but we don't know if we still need it anymore? Other things that we're doing that are really genuinely impactful for the business. Should this product even exist? We're building a product and we don't want to build it anymore and it's costing us loads of money. Do we still want it? Maybe we should sunset it and get rid of it. Should something new take its place? And again, it helps you to bridge this discovery validation gap because you're rolling things out in a way that's validating whilst you're delivering code, whilst you're delivering value. And it helps you to avoid a waste-producing machine. So what are the benefits of EDD? Particularly for engineers, it's compatible with other agile methodologies and frameworks, and lots of them already use TDD and EDD together, test-driven development, sorry. Essentially, when you're writing your user story, you can build in lots of different ways of writing the user story, and you can incorporate this into how you write it. Create features with the minimum amount of code, like what's the smallest amount of code you can write in order to deliver an idea. If it could be like 3 lines of JavaScript to launch an idea in front of a customer, do that. Don't spend 6 months building something and then work out that it was a bad idea to build it. You don't have to over-engineer for all the just-in-case scenarios. So imagine you're building a feature right now that there's some edge cases that it doesn't work for. And you think, well, what if we need to take this product out of the market in 6 months' time? If we built for all those edge cases, it might take us 6 months to build it. So we should start to learn something and validate it now, and then not have an over-engineered product that we're trying to launch. Oh, I just said that. But you can be grateful that you don't overdevelop your product, basically. You can remove features or add features quickly and go in either direction. So actually, imagine that the cognitive load of the page is really, really high and there's just too much stuff on there. You can easily remove features from the page as well. And the caveat here, though, is that you need to be able to deliver code easily. If you're stuck in a business where you can only release every 6 months, that isn't the scenario where you can easily use EDD. You might have to go through other ways of delivering experiments and code. But this is an example of where if you can release daily, weekly, even monthly, you can launch more stuff and learn more quicker. And then the simplest form of EDD Your team work to create a hypothesis, they design an experiment, you deploy and run it, you do your analysis and reporting, and then you run with your best option, and then you repeat that cycle. You repeat it every sprint, you repeat it every month, as frequently as you possibly can. So I've just hit 0 on the timer, and I've hit my summary, so I'll just leave this up. But essentially, discovery is not an end in itself. It's there as a tool to help you to find the customer problem that you need to solve. Once you've discovered your customer's needs more deeply, you still need to come up with really good ideas and solutions. If you don't use a low-risk process for validating your ideas, you could get stuck. You'll keep trying to find the right idea to deliver. And instead of failing fast and de-risking the process, this means you actually test ideas less frequently, and it's less in your working memory to be testing things quickly. And also, it's fine that the first idea you work on might not be the best one. It might be that actually the first 3 experiments you run, the first 3 tests you run, they're non-significant, they're not winners, but actually you've got into the habit of building experiments in the first place, and that gets you closer to the best idea the next time. So that's the end of my talk. Thank you for listening. If any of you want to connect on LinkedIn or come and talk to me or ask a question, please do. If anyone has oh, I missed that thing on your slide, just ask. So thank you all for listening.